I have tons of years of experience. I started out working at a college. I was at Swarthmore College as an instructor, then as assistant dean of the college, and then ultimately as an admissions officer. That was for 15 years. I took some time off to be Mr. Mom. I stayed home with my son, who is now 33 years old, which I can hardly believe. And then the next 26 years I spent as a high school counselor in 4 different school districts, 2 private and 2 public. The last one was Cherry Hill West over in South Jersey. I am coming to you from Wynwood, just outside of Philadelphia. And Wynwood is about maybe 4 miles from the western side, the West Philadelphia border to do. Wynwood previously was the land of the Lenape Indians, who had quite a swath of land coming up from Delaware through Pennsylvania and into New Jersey before they were so rudely taken away from the land by the so-called white settlers way back when. Many of the Lenni Lenape ended up moving toward the west, and some even ended up in the Vale of Tears, which went on through Oklahoma to do. So I respect them, and I respect the fact that we are on their land. The presentation today is about financial aid. I am not going to promise you that this is going to be the most interesting thing you've ever heard, but it will be useful and hopefully meaningful, because we need to understand how this process works, and I will go through step by step how to make it work for you. I also have a part about scholarship aid, talk about how that all works. We have until 7 o'clock planned. I don't believe that we'll go until 7 o'clock, but I will stay and answer questions that you have. Any questions that do come up, if you could please put them in the chat, because then Caitlin and Lynn will be monitoring the chat, and then they can feed me the questions as we go in, so I can concentrate on the presentation that I have for you. Any questions or concerns? There are no such thing as a stupid question. If it's something that's going to be meaningful to you, please ask. Please feel free to ask the questions that you do. For financial aid, I had training myself through the people who run the FAFSA. The woman who's in charge of the FAFSA, yes, it is a woman, thank you, Cindy Forbes Cameron, is a good friend of mine, and I took classes with her years ago so that I could understand this form and how it works as best that I can to do that. So I don't have any particular tricks, if you would, like if you're thinking like, oh, this guy's going to tell us all this like secret stuff to do. Yeah, well, there really isn't any secret stuff to do. I had this great plan one year. I thought, oh, okay, I'll go to my bank that I normally go to, and I'll get there like 10 minutes before they close, and I'll hide in the bathroom, and I'll bring like reading material and stuff with me, and then they'll forget that I'm there. And then when everybody's gone at night, I'll just take like $50 million, and then I'll put myself back in the bathroom. And then when they open up the next morning, I'll just be like, oh, hello, and go out and take the money. But they lock up the money, so that actually won't work. So we'll go through the FAFSA and we'll do it. Let's see what we come up with for that. Right, so let me do some screen share for you and start with this. The basics of financial aid for college. Show me the money. Now, I'm not going to do the slideshow, so you're going to see this smaller screen here, and this is being recorded, and it will be available on the YouTube channel of Bullhorn. So soon after this is finished, if you want any of this stuff, it will be available, readily available to you in a couple of days on the YouTube channel site to do. So show me the money, the basics of financial aid for college. We're not going to start with today. We're going to start back in the 60s. Now, I hate to admit this, but I was a high school student in the 1960s. I was born in 1950. I will turn 71 years of age next month, but I don't feel all that old because, number one, I get to work with fabulous young people like you. And number two, my father is still alive, and he will be 100 years old next month. So I still get to be the kid, even though I'm as old as I am. So it goes back to the 1960s when the first laws were passed in the United States for federal aid to education. Now, that in and of itself should make you really mad, because the United States had been around for a really long time before the 1960s. And yet, this was the first systematic means of bringing federal financial aid to people going to college. Now, did some people get some money before that? Sure. There was a law called the GI Bill that was passed for the people coming back from World War II, who were then able to use money they were given for their service to be able to go to school, to go to college. But that wasn't a system. That was just a specific law for a specific group of people. Now, the system that Congress set up in what was called the Secondary Education Act, that came about in roughly 1965. So you can see there was a lot of stuff happening at that point in time. The Civil Rights Act passed in 1964 and was implemented in 1965. And so, yes, I was a sophomore in high school when all of this was going on. So just a sense of perspective in doing that. The Higher Education Authorization Act was the money part of this. And so when all of these laws were being written up, and it's incredible to see how there's probably 400 to 600 pages in the document where this law is actually presented. There's two primary driving points that have to be consistently remembered. Right? Number one is that it is the responsibility of the student and the family to pay for college. That was written straight into this law. Now, if you are in the United States and you would like to attend a public school from grades 1 through 12, that is automatically free. You are entitled to that education. It's called free and appropriate education. Any place else in the world typically supports their students beyond high school. For example, if you were a German resident and you chose to go to school in Germany, it would cost you how much? Oh, that would be $0. College is free in Germany. Some of the Scandinavian states, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, basically free. A student in the United Kingdom might pay $800 to $1,000 a year for education. Some of the colleges in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, are free to their residents as well. We don't have that kind of system. We have a system where money talks, as you know, and the individuals who hold the money don't necessarily want the people who don't hold the money to have their money. And so we get a system like this. And it was assumed that the family and the student could pay for college because in the 60s, there had been a tremendous amount of growth in the United States. All the people coming back from World War II, the whole baby boomer thing. And so back at that time, it was assumed that families could pay for college. Let me tell you also that college expenses back then were really not very high. I attended college. My first year in college was in 1968, and I attended a private school. Well, back then, if I had gone to the state school, I grew up in New Jersey. If I had gone to Rutgers, I would have paid about $1,000 and then maybe $400 more for room and board. So about $1,500 a year. The private school I attended, I paid $2,310 for everything. For my tuition, for room and board, for my books, for $2,310. Well, back then, I had my union card and I worked as a construction laborer. I could make $2,000 in a summer. So I could pay for virtually my entire college expenses myself working in the summer. Those were the days. So that was part one. It is the responsibility of the student and the family to pay. Part two, debt doesn't count. So the people writing this law, the senators and the representatives, said, we don't want to give money to support people's lifestyle. So if you have a second home in the mountains or down the shore, or if you own a boat, or they're like, no, we're not going to give you money because you're in debt for these things. That's your problem. Now, of course, maybe what they didn't realize, and I'm being nice to them now, is that everybody's in debt. If you own your own home, you have a mortgage, that's called a debt. If you have car payments, that's an auto loan, that's called a debt. Some people are sending money overseas to help their relatives, their grandparents in Indonesia, their aunt and uncle, wherever it might be. That's a debt. Well, debt doesn't count. So if I own my own home, let's say my parents gave me the house, I don't have to pay a mortgage because I own my home. You live next door to me and you pay $2,000 a month to the bank to be able to keep your house. Well, that's $24,000 a year that the FAFSA thinks, the organizations that do this, that you have, but you don't actually have because debt doesn't count. So that's a good starting place for this, because every place you go, you'll be wondering, why is this system the way it is? Why isn't there money that's being given to people to go to college? This is the primary reason. It starts with this. So let's understand the costs of college, okay? There's the things that we see up front, the ones where you get the bill. So tuition, what you pay for your education. Fees. Now, be prepared, students. There will be these hidden fees all over the place. They might be for lab fees because they need to buy special equipment. They might be for COVID testing. They can be for anything. And you don't see that typically in the price of the college, but they're there. They're there. Colleges are getting better at saying tuition and fees coming together. I will tell you that some schools, the fees are as much as $1,500 more per year. So tuition fees, on-campus room and board, if you're choosing to live on campus, those are going to show up directly as college costs. But there's a ton of indirect costs. Your books. Now be smart here, students. When you go off to college, don't buy your books right away. Ask around students that took the class previously and say, hey, did your professor really use this book? How often did they use this book? Maybe you could just go to the library and borrow it. You might not need to own the book. It might not be a reference that you would use. Or go on Google, go on Amazon, go on eBay, type it in, the foundations of modern psychology, and what do you know? There it is. There are also hundreds of thousands of books that have been digitized and put into a library. So you can actually, in some cases, find electronic copies of these. So if you were to buy all the books that you were asked to use in a given semester, it could be $500, $600, $700 because textbooks cost a lot of money, a ton of money. So wait on doing that. Wait on buying your books. Supplies, and just normal kinds of things. The pens and pencils and papers, all of that stuff to do. Again, your best friend is the dollar store. You don't need fancy pens or pencils unless you have, like, I don't know, favorite Disney characters or favorite anime people. Then you can be fancy with it. But you don't need anything special with this. Technology, more than likely, you're going to bring a laptop or some type of computer to use. If you're living off campus, if you're living at home, personal expenses, I don't know about you, but one pizza a week has to be in there, and travel costs. Because if you decide to go away from home, you can't just teleport there. We're not quite in the Star Trek era yet. So you'll need to figure on that. If you're going to be traveling to Washington, D.C., to go to Howard or Georgetown or someplace like that, well, it's going to cost you money to get back and forth. If you go by car, the tolls are, good Lord, like $25, $30 just going by car. Now, they're not going to show up, but you have to take those into account. So if you figure that your college is going to cost you X amount of dollars, then you might want to look at these indirect costs and add another 5,000, 6,000, something like that. And that gives you the true amount that the college will cost you. A student's financial need is calculated as the difference between that cost of attendance. You'll see that abbreviation, COA, everywhere, not CIA, COA, everywhere, minus the anticipated financial assistance, such as outside scholarships and gifts. So let's say you decide to attend East Jesus University, and it costs $25,000 a year, and you get a scholarship from your church or your synagogue or your mosque for $5,000. Well, we subtract the $5,000 and the cost of attendance is $20,000. And the amount that the student and family is expected to pay is that cost of attendance minus the estimated family contribution. You know, that seems complicated, right? Like, what's this estimated family contribution? How does this come in here? What is that all about? Well, it's here. The primary tool for calculating the student assistance is the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A. Please take careful note of that first word, free. Number one, it's the greatest F word in the English language. And number two, do not fall into the spammer trap of having to pay someone to do the FAFSA for you. You see on that slide, there is a site for FAFSA. If you do fafsa.ed.edu or fafsa.ed.com or fafsa.ed.org, all the spammers are going to hit you because they know that you could make that mistake. And you'll go online and it's going to look totally legit. And they're going to say, okay, we'll take care of your FAFSA. You just give us $80 or $100. Okay. Please don't do this. There is no cost to completing the FAFSA. No cost. You don't need an expert to do it. All you need are your records. Your records, the students, and your parent or guardian's records. That's all you need. You don't need to pay somebody to do a FAFSA for you. Okay? So the estimated family contribution comes in. So let's move to the next slide. So let's go to the FAFSA and apply, right? That's the first thing we would do. We would go to the FAFSA and apply. Except that's not actually the first thing that you do. The first thing you do is you go to the Federal Student Aid site and you establish an FSA, Federal Student Aid ID number. Okay, now that's this site. Okay, well, that's the FAFSA. Sorry, I lied. Okay, wait, where did it go? Oh no, it's gone. I lost it. That's very sad. Okay, let me get it back. Here it is. That is this site here, studentaid.gov, FSA ID, create account, etc. That's in, you'll see that, that's in the presentation. So you go here and you create an FSA ID for yourself and for at least one of your parents or guardians. They can both do it, or if you have a blended family and you have several, all three, all four can do it, but you have to have at least one parent or guardian. You need a social security number and a phone number. Ooh, that might be a problem. You're thinking, okay, I don't have a social security number. Well, you can still fill out the FAFSA and just let them know that you don't. You would not be eligible for federal assistance. You may be eligible for state assistance. That varies. So if you are, for example, an undocumented student, because you don't have a social security number, you may get money from Pennsylvania. There are certain circumstances where you can and certain prohibitions where you can't. New Jersey, it's a lot easier for an undocumented student to get money. Now, if your parents don't have a social security number, then you would simply put 9 zeros where you're asked for their social security number. Zeros across the board. You still can't get federal aid, but you'll definitely get more state assistance with that. You would be eligible for anything that a resident of your state would be able to get. So any money from the state, for instance, to do. So that's actually the first thing you do before you would do anything with the FAFSA itself. That's what you would do. So it takes a little while because you have to answer a whole bunch of questions, of course. You have to create your account. You're all used to that with creating accounts for any number of different things. But that's where you, oh, wait, sorry. I just can't believe I just did that. I just X'd myself out. Let me go back. Here we go. Let's move back. Okay, so we go to the FAFSA and apply. No, this is where we go. We go here to create the idea, and then you can jump over to the FAFSA and begin the process. Okay. So before we go on, what is the FAFSA? When can you do this? Can your parents and you do this tonight? No. The FAFSA doesn't open until October 1st. So if you went to the FAFSA site, fafsa.ed.gov, you would see it, it's there. But that would be for students who are still going to school now in this school year. Maybe they're going to take a 3-week course at the local community college that's going to end the first week of September. Don't use that because that would be useless. Nobody's going to honor it. No, it's not going to work. So October 1st is when you actually go to the FAFSA. Okay. So let me draw back before we actually look at the FAFSA and go through some of it. Caitlin, Lynn, any questions coming up that I should answer?
I do not see any questions at this moment. If
Okay,
anyone does have questions, I will make sure to unmute and tell you.
fabulous. Okay, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Right, so what is the FAFSA? It is a federally managed document, goes through the U.S. Department of Education, that will ask questions about the student and the family's income, the money earned through working, and assets, any money that's in savings, checking, or other kinds of accounts. So both count. Both the student and the parent guardian will complete separate forms, well, not separate forms, but separate information on the FAFSA. The FAFSA then computes that EFC and reports that to the family and to the college that the student applies. And remember, it's free. This is a service that you're getting. Finally, my tax dollars at work. So finally, you're getting something from this to do. Right. So what does the FAFSA look like? This is what the FAFSA looks like. Now, this is a paper copy, and this of course is last year's, right? So this looks a little intimidating. The electronic one looks a little bit better. So they give you some information about, let's see where the state of Pennsylvania goes. All first-time applicants, blah, 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 needs to be in by blah, 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 blah. Okay. So all this basic information. What is the FAFSA? What is the FAFSA? Blah, blah, blah. So we start here. And you notice the first part is for the student. So it asks about student information, and we get to number 8, your social security number. And I'll mention again, if you do not have a social security number, you can leave it blank. You will not get federal aid. You may get state aid for this. Your date of birth. If you are 24 years of age or older, the FAFSA will not ask you for any information about your parents because it is assumed that you are an independent individual. So anybody who's 24 or above, not have to worry about any parent income. You will be asked for your driver's license number and state if you have one, because this is another way to establish your identity. Are you a U.S. citizen? Okay. Yeah. Marital status. Now this is interesting. I am single. I am married, remarried. I am separated. This is another piece that determines independence. If you are married, you become automatically independent, even if you're 16. Now, please don't take that as, hey, Cigus said we should go get married and then we'd be independent and we get more money for college. Yeah, bad idea. Okay, bad idea, right? If you are separated or divorced, it depends on your marital status. It depends on where you are in the state. Okay, so if you are married, or if you're over 24, then you are automatically independent. Right? So they ask you about male or female. FAFSA hasn't gotten around to the non-binary folks of the world, so please forgive them for that. But the real reason they do that is that if you are a male, you identify as male, you will be asked to register with the Selective Service System, which is a fancy word for saying the draft. So if, God forbid, this country came into armed conflict and they needed people to serve, that's where the draft would come in. So if you are a male, now this may change because, as you know, equality is becoming more and more of an issue. So if you are a male, you would hit register me. And here, have you been convicted of possession, drugs, etc.? This is another area that's starting to temper a little bit. That drug offenses, as minor as they were, would usually disqualify students for any financial aid, but that's beginning to change to do, right? So they ask you where you are in high school, what's the name of your high school? And then here in question 28, it says, will you have your first bachelor's degree before you start the school year? And if you answer yes, again, just like married, just like age 24, parents disappear. You are independent. You are independent, right? So then you put your status, right? Never attended college, first year undergraduate. They ask for this because financial aid depends on what year you apply. There's more financial aid available for first-time students than there are for others. So if you get on board with a certain financial aid award, you'll pretty much keep that unless your income changes. But if you start applying in your third year, there's not a lot of money left for junior students because it goes to the younger students. And it's going to ask you what degree you're looking for. Bachelor's degree, that's the normal 4-year degree. Associate degree, that's community college. That's the 2-year degree. Okay? Then it gets into income. So it asks you questions about did you file a return with the IRS for income tax? And if you haven't, that's not a problem. You have to make a pretty substantial amount of money to be required to file. So it's unlikely that most of you, maybe even any of you, have filed here. So you go through this and you figure out all of the information. It asks you about your income. And if you are married, if you have a spouse, wages, salaries, any money that you have in your savings account or your checking account or your Venmo account, anything here. If you have any investments, yeah, I'm 16 years old. I have a ton of investments. If you own any land or property, how much is your farm worth? No, for that. And then there's all this separate information here that's really unlikely to apply to any of you, but it has to be here because there might be 2 or 3 people. So for example, combat pay. Let's say you finished high school, but you decided to go into the Army, and now you're coming back and applying. So you're still only 20 years old. And yes, maybe you've had combat pay for that. And then, of course, there's untaxed income because they want to learn all about that stuff too, because then they can say, okay, but you didn't make any money working at a job, but your father or mother paid your father or mother child support. So we're going to count that too. So that's pretty mean, by the way, just to let you know. So all that stuff goes here. Now, here are your questions, again, about parental information. Were you born before? In other words, are you over 24? Are you married? Will you be working on a master's degree? So all of these questions here, right? Have you been a ward of the court? Have you been in foster care at any time since you turned 13? Are you an emancipated minor? Does someone other than your parent or step-parent have legal guardianship of you? Any of these, okay? If you answer yes to any of these, then you do not have to provide any parent information, any one of those. But if you do, here's the parent information. Now you're going to notice this looks exactly like what you were asked to provide, Social Security number. And again, if your parents do not have a Social Security number, 000000000, zeros across the board for that. Parents' email address, state of residence, all this business here. Now, this number 72 is a very important question. How many people are in your parents' household? It's really important because when FAFSA determines how much money you need, they're going to take into account how many people your house is supporting. So, for example, when I applied to college, my father's parents, my grandparents, my 3 aunts, and the old cousin from Italy, you know, like the one that's supposed to come for like a year and never leaves, they lived on the first floor. My family, 5 of us, I have a younger brother and sister, we lived on the second floor. And my father's brother, my Uncle Joe, and his wife lived on the 3rd floor. There were 13 people in my house growing up. 13 people. So it takes a little more to run a house with 13 than a house with 3. And then how many people are college students? Well, it would just be 1. The more people that are college students, the more aid that each one will receive. So if 1 student were in college and they received $10,000 in aid, if 2 students were in college, the family might receive $12,000 in aid for both of them, for each of them to do. Okay. Now here, question 74 is about assistance programs that your family and you may have participated in. So if you had free or reduced school lunch and you check this box here, this again is a signal to the FAFSA people that you have financial need to do. So then parent tax information, all of this stuff. If your parents have not been filing income tax forms, first of all, I don't want to know about that. But secondly, that could be a real issue here. because FAFSA is going to expect accounting from them, right? So same thing, just again, this looks the same as what you did. Parents' income, parents' wages, parents' checking account, savings account, all of that information. Same thing here, all the exemptions, all the exceptions to do. And then it finally comes back here to you, how many people are in your household per year, right? Same thing here. Now, this FAFSA is an older one. This is 2 years old. You can actually put up to 10 schools on your FAFSA. So let's say you're applying to Temple, okay? And then you're applying to Drexel, and then you're applying to Arcadia, and then you're applying to Elizabethtown. You can put up to 10 schools here, and FAFSA will send to 10 schools. Now, I know it's unusual for students to apply to more than 10 schools, but it could happen. So what do you do then? You're stuck. No. If you apply to more than 10 schools, you wait 2 weeks, and then the FAFSA is processed. It typically doesn't take longer than 3 to 5 days, but you wait 2 weeks just to make sure. Go back into your FAFSA, open it up again, take all these schools out and put the other ones in. Number 11, number 12, number 13, and then send it off again. You can do that multiple times. FAFSA will be like, okay, I'll do this for you. Then the last couple things, when did you complete it? Sign. Now, the reason we got those IDs, the FSA IDs, is that we can avoid this. Because if you did decide, God knows why you would do this, but if you did decide to download the FAFSA on paper, sign it and mail it out, it would delay by 5 weeks the calculation and the receipt of the estimated family contribution. So please don't do that. Do it electronically. It calculates your estimated family contribution like that. It sends it off electronically. Colleges get it in a couple of days. You're done. Okay? So that's what the FAFSA actually looks like. Okay. Told you this wasn't going to be the most interesting stuff in the world to do. So where does the money come from after the FAFSA goes? 2 sources, the federal government and your state government. Now in Pennsylvania, it's called the Pennsylvania Higher Education Assistance Authority, PHEAA, pronounced THEA. When you finish your FAFSA, if you are a Pennsylvania resident, once the FAFSA comes up, it'll give you a couple of minutes to look at it, and then a new screen will come up and will say, hey, would you like to go to the THEA website and answer some questions for them? And you answer yes. It's going to ask you maybe, last year was, I think, 8 questions, just basically about living in Pennsylvania. And then you would be qualified to get money from the state. Now, state doesn't give you a ton. The maximum scholarship that the state will give you, THEA, last year was about $8,000. But if you decide to go to Community College of Philadelphia or Delaware County Community College, $8,000 is almost your entire tuition. Whoa. So we're not turning those down, not at all. Now, private scholarships awarded by the college or community, they're not included in this. Okay, this is just the money that you can expect from federal government and state to do. Now, you're going to see these big numbers and you're going to think, oh my God, how am I going to pay that? But that's just the federal and the state government. The school can chip in their share. So if you apply to Drexel and your estimated family contribution is $30,000, well, maybe you get $5,000 from the state, maybe you get $10,000 from the feds. Drexel might give you the other 15. So there is some uncertainty with this because each college is different. What kind of aid do you get? Scholarships and grants. What's the difference between the two? A scholarship is for something specific. A grant is for anything in the college. Now, this is money that you don't have to repay. This is a gift to you. Loans. Loans are counted as financial aid. So if you qualify for a loan, you have to qualify for a loan. You can't just say, ooh, I'm going to borrow money. You have to qualify for the loan. That's counted as financial aid. And then the last thing is called work study, college work study program. Students are placed in various jobs across the campus. The maximum that you can work is 12 hours a week. So typically you might earn anywhere, I think the maximum amount is about $3,000 a year that you can earn through work study. The work study jobs are saved for students who need the financial aid, and they're usually among the best on campus. So for example, what is the best campus job? It's babysitting the field house. You take a 3 or 4 hour shift, you bring music to listen to, you bring books to do your studies, you give out towels, you give out volleyballs, you give out basketballs. That's all you do. Greatest job ever. You don't really do anything. What's the worst job ever? Working in the dining hall. Because if people are unhappy of the choices to eat, whom do they blame? You. So yeah, don't take that job. Don't take that job. Unbeknownst to most people, if the college will allow you, you can do your work study off campus if you do it for a nonprofit. So let's just say, just off the top of my head, that you want to become an art therapist and you're going to college for art therapy and you qualify for work study. You can ask the college if you can go to a children's shelter and do your work study art therapy there. And they say yes. And you're like, yay. It is up to the college. You don't have to say yes, but it is up to the college to do, right? Remember, free money is the best kind. So are there other forms that the family must complete? Yes. But before we go to that, all right, let's see how this EFC thing works, right? Right. So I'm going to go through this. We'll make up a couple of numbers, right? So student status is dependent, right? You're not an independent student. Where do you live? You live in Pennsylvania. Okay. Household size. All right. I'm going to say I have a younger sister. So I have two parents, brother and sister. Household members in college would be just one. That's me. Parent information, 2. Here's a weird question. Age of oldest parent. Why are they asking this? Well, because the older your parents are, the more protection they get, the less money they have to pay because they're getting closer to retirement. So let's say my dad is 60. He's the elder parent. Did they file taxes? Yes. Okay. Now, let's say my dad is, what can we make my dad? Let's make my dad a pizza maker. Okay. So his income is going to be $47,000 a year. Income tax paid. 47,000 means you're about in the 15% bracket. So let's say 5,000. Okay. Income from work, all of it. And let's say mom is a daycare worker and she made 38,000 for the year. Okay. Adjusted gross, this must be for both. Sorry. I missed that part. So that's 85,000. Okay. Which sounds like a lot of money. It's not. Trust me. It's not. If you're paying $2,000 a month rent, that goes down to 60,000 right away. Untaxed income is 0. Parent savings, let's say they have $3,000 in the bank. Investment, who has investments? Are you kidding me? Nobody owns their business, 0. Student filed taxes. No, so this is you. You made $1,369 babysitting last year. Untaxed income is 0. Student savings, you have $398 in your piggy bank. You have no investments, and you don't own a business or a farm. Okay. Ready? So the expected family contribution would be $10,094 a year for your college education. Okay. That would mean if you went to one of the community colleges, you're probably not going to get any financial aid. If you went to Temple, you would get some. If you went to Penn, you would get a lot more. And I'll explain that as we go. Right? Now, let's change this a little bit, right? So 10,900, we got 4 people. We've got 1 in college. Let's make Dad 40 years old. Okay, watch what happens. Oh, that's wrong. That should have changed. It should have been around 12,000 to do that. But anyway, this is the type of formula that they use for this. And you can go, this is finaid.org. It's a wonderful website. And you can go and you could use this and kind of try to figure this out yourself to do. Okay, so we got the FAFSA. So I'm glad you asked, are there any other forms that the family must complete? Well, about 200 colleges and scholarship programs use something called the College Scholarship Search Profile. These are usually schools that have a ton of money, and they don't have to just go by the FAFSA guidelines. They can use their money in ways that FAFSA doesn't ask about. Because see, the FAFSA is a federal document, so they can't ask certain questions. They can't ask about housing, so they can't ask about mortgage payments. So this profile, the CSS profile, that you can find at our friends in mine, the College Board. How much do we love the College Board? Yay! Yes, the College Board is totally evil. Just answer me this question. What are the first 3 letters of the word Satan? SAT? That's not an accident, okay? So here's the College Board, and you go on the College Board website, and it says apply with CSS profile. You sign into your account in College Board, and then you find out which schools need it. And here's all the schools that need it. So you're saying, okay, I'm going to apply to Temple, and I'm going to apply to Penn. Let's see, let's find Temple. I know I have to send it to Temple, right? Temple's a big school. I have to, Temple. Oh, no Temple. What do you know? How about the University of Pennsylvania? Oh yeah, there it is. So you would have to send it to the University of Pennsylvania. Now, just let me tell you straight out, okay? This is a pain in the ass, the profile. It's really extensive. This will take several hours to complete. I wish I had a picture of it, but College Board is super protective. They won't even release a blank one so that people can see what they're ready to fill out. This is a pain. And it's not free. Like, what? Hey, right? It's not free. You mean I have to pay money to see if I get money? Yeah, it totally sounds like a scam, doesn't it? Like if you got that in one of your emails, like, hey, give me $15 and I'll show you where you're going to get money on the internet. You'd be like, get lost. But this is not a scam. The profile will analyze all the student and family resources a lot more thoroughly, and it then allows the colleges to use their money as they see fit. Most of the colleges that require this profile have a ton more money. So even though this profile is more tedious and complex, it is well worth the family's effort. Well worth the effort. Okay, you only have to complete it once and you can send it to multiple schools. There are fee waivers for this. You can apply for fee waivers just like you do for any other College Board things. Okay, you can apply for a fee waiver for this. Okay, all right. So I'm actually getting toward the end here, which is good. It's almost 6 o'clock. So some things are not what they seem. There was a wonderful TV show on maybe 20, 30 years ago called Twin Peaks. It was a very odd show, kind of like Orphan Black, those kinds of type shows. You sort of didn't know what was going on at any time, and there was a definite weirdness about it, but it was a great show. And there was a recurring theme because they were all out in the woods, and they would say, the owls are not what they seem, because they had this like hidden meaning to them. So that's what this phrase is. Some things are not what they seem. So it would be normal to assume that the colleges that cost the least would be your better bargain, right? So how much does it cost to go to Temple for a year? X dollars. How much does it cost to go to the University of Pennsylvania? Twice X dollars. But many of those really expensive colleges in the US are the ones that can afford to give you more money. So do not let cost be the primary determination unless you do your homework. So look at this. If you wanted to go to the main campus at Penn State, the cost of attendance is $36,444 for an in-state student. Now that includes room and board. The average amount of financial aid that a Penn State student receives is $6,357, which actually makes the cost a little under $30,000. But then look at the University of Pennsylvania. Their cost of attendance is $71,715. Yikes. But their average financial aid is $43,031. Whoa. Penn's endowment. You know what an endowment is for a college? That's the money that they have in reserve that they can use on whatever expenses they want. The endowment at the University of Pennsylvania is roughly $11 billion. B as in billion, B. So the actual cost of the University of Pennsylvania for this student that qualifies for the average financial aid is less than Penn State. Less than Penn State. OMG. Okay, let's do another one. Right? Let's do another one. This is New Jersey now. So Rutgers is the Penn State of New Jersey. It's New Jersey's state school. Why isn't it called the University of New Jersey? Well, because I think that nobody wants people to know that they're in New Jersey. Sorry, that was mean. All right. So cost of attendance, a little less than Penn State, $33,457. Average financial aid, much better than Penn State, $12,941. So the actual cost of an in-state resident to Rutgers is $20,516. Princeton, okay, cost of attendance, $74,000, but average financial aid, almost $53,000. And the actual cost is less than $1,000 more than Rutgers. Holy mackerel. Or wait, what's that? Joe Biden says, no malarkey. Okay? And there's a Wawa on campus at Princeton. So there. So when you make your list of colleges, do not let the price be the major determinant. Cost and distance kind of run together, because distance adds expenses, and distance might add tiers, like your mom's and dad's tiers to that. So you check that out first, but don't skip schools like a Penn where you would have a chance of being admitted because you don't think you can afford it. Maybe you can with the financial aid that they can provide. Okay. So it's not the sticker price. It's not the sticker price. It's the actual price. Now, I don't think any of you have had the wonderful experience of buying a car, but when you go to buy a car, there's the sticker price, and this is what it says. The 2021 Hyundai Sonata costs $27,000. Nobody pays $27,000 for that. You make a deal with the car dealer, just like when you book a flight on an airline. You don't pay full. I mean, who goes on the websites and says, please give me the full price? You ask for the cheapest price. So I take an airplane to Dallas, Texas. I might be sitting next to a person that paid $100 more for their seat than I did, but the guy next to me on the other side paid $80 less. So this is what it's all about. It's finding the right price. As of 2017, any college that receives federal funding must provide a net cost calculator. So remember that little thing I went through on the Finaid website where I did the calculation? Every college has these. So if I go to, where do I want to go? Let's go to my old place. Let's go to Swarthmore, my old college. Swarthmore is in Delaware County, down by Chester. Okay, so I go to admissions and aid, financial aid and cost, net price calculator. I go here, and then I start putting all my money in here. Where do I access the net price calculator? They use the College Board's net price calculator, which is great because then you can use it once. Swarthmore is so pretty. Oh, thank you, Swarthmore, for being so pretty. And I can use this now at several colleges and not just one. Okay? Now, this doesn't, I mean, I can't do get started because then it would ask me for numbers and things like this. But every college has this. So before you decide to shipwreck your dreams or choose not to apply because of cost, go here first. You may find out that you could afford this school when you look at your numbers and what they can afford to give to you, right? So it's not the sticker price, it's the actual price that matters, okay? Now, we've only been talking about need-based aid, meaning I don't have any money, you got to give me some. Okay, need-based aid. There's also a whole bunch of money for merit-based aid. There are 4 typical reasons a student would get merit-based aid. For academic achievement, I'm an A student, I have a really tough set of courses, and I'm getting a recommendation from my school. Okay. Athletic prowess. I am the reigning shot put champion in the city. I'm 2nd in the state, and my distance is 5th in the country. There you go. Artistic skills, dance, music, visual arts, theater, etc. Typically, you do an audition, and they award scholarships based on that. And then community involvement and service. So there are schools that have scholarships for students who have aided with diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, with students that have aided in poverty efforts. Lots of money is available here. Not as much as need-based aid, but there's some money here. There's some definite money here for this. So merit aid is a great source. Where does it come from? It comes from the schools mostly. So if you apply to Temple, there will be some merit-based money, and you can see what they offer. If you apply to the University of California system, there are 4-5 pages of merit-based scholarships for which you might be eligible. So it could come from community organizations, could come from national foundations, could come from private sources, the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. There's lots of different places. Here's the interesting thing. Music is the best supported art and performance major, music, and engineering is the best supported among the non-arts. Music and engineering are the two big ones to do. Okay. When are these financial aid forms and scholarship applications due? Well, the FAFSA and the profile open on October 1st of your senior year. Okay, for those of you who are seniors, October 1st of your senior year. It is wise to complete and submit them as soon as you can after October 1st, because financial aid is on a case-by-case basis. Oh, so if you wait till February, the money might be gone. Don't wait. Don't wait. You will need your parents' or guardians' help with this, but let them know. Let them know. Anytime after October 1st, dive in. Dive in. I'm available. You can email me if you have questions about any of this. I will help you. Don't know how much time I'm going to have at that point, but I will help you as much as I can. Merit-based scholarships are all over the place. There's one gigantic national one. The deadline's already passed. It's already passed. But then others will go all the way up to January and February and stay open. You really have to consult with each college's website, right? Because they do vary. They absolutely vary with that. And where can you find more information? Studentaid.gov and finaid.org. Finaid.org is just a great. The man who runs finaid.org, Mark Kantrowitz, is actually a retired financial aid officer, and he operates that website for free. I mean, this man is like my hero. For free. He does all of it for free, which is absolutely fabulously wonderful. Okay. So that's it for my presentation. I am welcoming of questions now. So Caitlin and Lynn, what do we got?
So I don't see any questions as of right now, but a lot of people are saying thank you so much. This information has been great.
It's a lot to sink in. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you did an amazing job in just explaining. I think people are really just thankful. Again, another thank you so much. But yeah, if anyone has questions, you can drop them.